Hello, Trombone Internet. This is Chris Van Hoff, assistant to the regional manager of the International Trombone Festival. We at the festival, of course, are huge fans of the pod, and we are really excited to invite you to attend this year's 2024 International Trombone Festival at TCU in Fort Worth, Texas. Dave Begnosh is our host. We have the world premiere of a brand new double concerto for trombone and piano with the Fort Worth Symphony. We have the American Brass Quintet. We have late night jazz featuring a Latin jam session. Like, everything is happening. All the cast will be there. It's the best hang in the world, and we hope to see you there. You can register for the festival still online at www.internationaltrombonefestival.com, and it's happening the last week of May. So go register. We'll see you in Texas.
It's weird. I feel like I should have like a trombone and bow.
Yeah,
It's very strange.
absolutely.
Hot mic.
All right.
Welcome to the Trombone Retreat, podcast of the Third Coast Trombone Retreat. Today on the podcast, new and up and coming trombonist Joseph Alessi, principal trombonist of the New York Philharmonic. My name is Sebastian Vera. And I'm joined as always by the itch that I can't quite scratch. Nick Schwartz. Nick, look, people.
I know. It's amazing.
Well, we are here. We have never done this live before, so this is a new experience for us. We're very excited. Thank you so much for coming to hang out. We are live at the 50th International Trombone Festival. I only took one math class in college because I was a music major, but I think that's a pretty big number.
That's more than I took.
So, thank you everyone for coming here and taking time away from playing Bolero as loud as you can in your room to hang out with us. We're going to have a good time. For those of you who don't know who we are, we're just a couple of friends who had an idea in a bar once and started a trombone festival for college students trying to make that transition to the professional world, to kind of hope to build a bridge. And 8 years?
8 years is our eighth retreat this summer.
That's ridiculous.
Next month, yeah. And then we started a podcast. It wasn't intended to be a pandemic project. We had this idea maybe a year leading up to the pandemic.
Yeah, we're not a cliche.
But our first podcast came out 1 month before the pandemic began, so it quickly evolved into a great distraction during the pandemic.
And of course, like most things we do, we had no idea what we were doing when we started. And
We still don't.
we kind of know a little bit more now. Now we're on our I think this is our 27th episode that you guys are going to join us to be a part of. We've been listened to in 80 countries and by tens of thousands of downloads. And we're as surprised as anyone about that. So we're grateful to everyone that has supported us. So, feel comfortable. You don't have to be quiet. Feel free to laugh. Feel free to applaud. Feel free to boo, as long as it's Nick that you're booing. One thing we'd like to mention is on the Whova app, there is a way to ask questions. So we put a poll, like, if you could ask Joe Alessi anything, what would you ask him? So if you'd like to ask questions, we're going to take a look at them, and there's a chance we may ask one of those questions towards the end, unless it's from Jim Nova. And I saw him looking at his phone like, Jim, no chance.
We had 145.
No chance. And so please submit there.
Well, I think we're going to move forward, but first, our podcast has been supported generously by Houghton Horns.
Yes. And we have Dennis from Houghton Horns over here, this handsome gentleman. So go visit the Houghton Horns table. They're the exclusive dealer of Tyne instruments in America, so go check that out. They've been wonderful for us in helping us get this going. And without further ado,
Please welcome Joe Alessi, principal trombonist.
I have some gum on my fingers here.
Hey, at least it's not boogers.
And we're back.
Okay.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
You know, doing a podcast. It's weird. I'm used to just like staring at Nick on a screen, and now it's like, oh, there's like people here. I have to like make eye contact and like talk.
So welcome, Joe. Thank you for coming. So to give you a little breakdown of what we like to do, we kind of want to just get into your history and how you got into the trombone and kind of how you got from point A to point B, where you are right now, point Z.
All right. Joseph Norman Alessi.
Mm-hmm.
So we're born in Detroit, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll see if all the factoids on Wikipedia are correct or not. But, so, and then you moved to California pretty young?
Yes. I mean, a lot of people, I've mentioned my history, but if you don't mind, I'll go over a few facts again.
Please.
But my parents were moving out of New York, and my dad was on his way to California to work in the LA studios. And so he left the Metropolitan Opera, and it was a low-paying job. My mother wanted to stop singing at the opera house and start a family. So anyway, my father, on the way to LA, he stopped in Las Vegas, and he went to the Musicians Union and asked, is there any work around town here? And he said, matter of fact, there is. And anyway, he ended up in the relief band. Relief band back in those days in the early 60s was a band that you would spell a musician every night. So he would work every single night, playing the Tropicana, the Sahara, and this is with Frank Sinatra days, and he played with Carl Fontana, and so anyway, we lived in Las Vegas after I was born. My mother stayed in Michigan with her family because my dad was working every night, and that's why I was born in Detroit. But as soon as that happened, we lived in Vegas, and then eventually we moved to California. My father worked in the San Francisco Opera and San Francisco Symphony.
And trumpet player. Correct?
Trumpet player. Yes.
So was he one of your first teachers?
He was, yeah. He wanted to get me. He started me quite young on the cornet, and
nobody's perfect.
And he was very good with showing me rhythms and his rhythm when he would sing when he would play. So and he very loudly sing, and he would really show you exactly how to do a quarter and 2/8, and you had to do it exactly right. And anyway, so I played Billy Boy. My first public performance was Billy Boy in my first grade class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'm sure you know that tune. Anyway.
We got a young audience.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about on the show of the challenge of studying with a parent. It's never an easy thing for whatever psychological reason. Was it ever challenging taking lessons from your dad?
Yes, it's not. There were some tears in the lessons. Not because he was mean or anything. He just, he just had to get it right. But he eventually just told me, you don't have to practice, son. It's okay. You don't have to be a trumpet player or brass player. And so when he said that kind of made me angry, and I wanted to say I'm going to prove to him that I'm going to practice.
Like you thought in a way he was saying like, oh, you're not good enough. Like,
well, no, I think he knew. He knew that I really wanted it, but and so it was a letdown when he said that to me. When he was kind of disappointed. I was disappointed to hear that, and I said, God, I want to show him that I really want to do this because I respected him very much. So anyway, that's so after a while they had to stop me, beg me to stop practicing, and I said, why did you stop? I said, no, kept going.
Well, so you're on cornet, right? So when did trombone come into the equation?
You know, well, that was when I was getting quite good on the cornet, and technically was improving, but couldn't really play any high notes or top notes. And I was only 8 years old, so what kind of top notes would you have anyway?
Together,
but he just had a feeling that I might struggle on the trumpet, and so he brought this trombone home, and I was very upset to see the trombone. Ironically, so he said, I just want you to try this. He called me Joey, and he had this Brooklyn accent. I said, Joey, why don't you try this? And so I didn't want to try it, and then he said, okay, I'll just leave it here. And so he caught me at another weak moment when I was practicing. I couldn't play a high note. I was crying, and he said, okay, just try the trombone one time. And so I did, and because the tuning note on the trumpet, I just played the tuning note. I played a high B flat. That was my first note.
Your first note.
Yeah, and so that was in my brain, and that was the day I became a trombone player. And then I didn't know what I was going to do with the trombone. I knew some of the trumpet things that were out there, but it wasn't until my dad brought home the Chicago Symphony Low Brass record. And when I heard that, that's when I got very inspired. And I said, wow, listen to these trombone players playing together, and they're playing chords, and listen to that. I didn't really understand anything about chords or tuba or anything like that. When I heard that, then I said, okay, now I have a goal. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really think professionally at all at that point. That came later.
So did you always just kind of have a drive within you to just kind of be your best, or just like, I'm doing this now and I want to figure it out?
Yeah, I think when I went over to the trombone, I had all these basic skills from rhythm, and I was able to put together, a way of practicing back then that, because my father stressed all the meat and potatoes books of that time, Schlossberg and Arbon's, and then because he taught trumpet lessons at home 5 or 6 days a week, and especially on the weekends, trumpet lessons would start at 8 o'clock in the morning, give half-hour lessons. And so I knew every etude. I knew all the characteristic studies. I just knew Arbon's from the beginning to the end of the book, just from sitting there kind of sleeping and hearing the first lesson start. And I could see what things he got excited about when he taught. Mainly rhythm. He was, if your rhythm wasn't right, he didn't like that. And so you hear him say something to the students. So, but anyway, so when I started on the trombone, I just continued that same meat and potatoes kind of practice. And then he sent me over to, he couldn't really teach me anymore. It was time to suggest a trombone teacher. So Barry Ehrlich, who lives up in Seattle, he was my very first trombone teacher. Had a wonderful sound. He was a freelancer in the San Francisco area. And then I studied with all the symphony players from there on.
So, like, how old were you when you started getting out of the house for lessons?
Out of the house? Probably shortly after that, maybe 10 years old.
Wow. 10 years old.
Yeah. And Ned Meredith and my dad would drive me to San Francisco or drive me to Mill Valley, where Miles Anderson was. And next week, interesting, I'm having lunch in San Francisco with Miles Anderson and Mark Lawrence, the three of us together.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be terrific.
So I heard a story once, and I wonder if this is true, that when you went to go study with Mark for the first time, that your dad requested to come and see the lesson. And Mark didn't know who it was, so he said, "No, I don't allow parents in the lesson."
Oh, I think that was another teacher.
Oh, someone else? Okay.
That was with Jay Friedman.
Oh, really?
With Jay, and anyway, that's a long story, but Yeah, Mark didn't want to teach me. He did said I don't take high school kids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then my dad said, just give him one lesson.
Yeah.
Then listen to this.
So yeah, that was how that went down.
So you started basically playing when you were 8, and it seems like you got a pretty slow start winning a position in the San Francisco Ballet when you were 16. So, did you feel like you were getting behind? So you just kind of had to hurry, or I mean, we were sarcastic. So I read that. So did you graduate high school early?
Yes. Yeah. I there was a counselor at my high school, and she could tell that I was already playing professionally around town with the brass quintet, the young audiences they had back then. The program brass quintet was Chuck Metzger and people you would know, Zach Spellman, and great players in the Bay Area. And so she could see that this was happening, so she called me into her office and said, if you take summer school this summer, you can graduate in 3 years. You don't have to stay here anymore. I said, great, and so I took a couple classes, and that was it. I had my diploma, and then I did audition for Curtis, because Mark went to Curtis, and also a friend of mine, Steve Camilos, who was in Sacramento. He studied with the same teachers. We were the two. He was played in the honor band with me, and so he was a top player. So he got into Curtis, and so I auditioned the following year. And so when that one year I was very fortunate, I auditioned for the ballet, and I got to work in the San Francisco Ballet for a year and play Stravinsky and Fairy's Kiss. We played Mahler. The first time I played Mahler 5, they made the scherzo movement. They made a ballet out of that.
Oh.
Michael Smulin, who was the choreographer, did that. And we did Romeo and Juliet, the Prokofiev. At a very young age, I fell in love with that music. And ever since then, it's just been a favorite of mine.
Nick, what were you doing when you were 16? What music were you playing?
I'm not playing Romeo and Juliet, I can tell you that much.
So what were we doing in marching band?
And Mitchell Ross was sitting next to me. He was my teacher, and Woody Williams was on the right. And it was a great orchestra, to play in the San Francisco Opera House was amazing.
Did you have any idea what it was like? I mean, taking an audition at that age, did you have any idea what was going on, or were you just kind of like?
My dad coached me on that. He knew all the ballet excerpts because he had worked in that orchestra as well as a freelancer, and also working at the Met, he knew all this kind of repertoire, and so he coached me on that, and yeah, it was. I could have stayed there for years. Our good friend my replacement.
Paul Goff, yeah.
Paul just retired from that job.
Wait, he was the direct replacement.
Yeah.
So there's only been 3 people since you had that job.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So you moved on to Curtis, and you started a year early in Curtis, correct?
No.
Oh, because you played at the ballet for how many years? In 2 years then?
1 year in the ballet.
1 year in the ballet, and then you audition Curtis. You go to Curtis. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience there?
Well, yeah, it's a dream come true to go to the Curtis Institute. First of all, it's a school that is very small. They just have enough for the one trombone section, so you have 4 trombones and a tuba, and so you get to know everybody very intimately, and you get to play with the same people all the time, which is really interesting. So you have to really, work together, and the teachers were great. I studied with the great pedagogue B. Stewart. He was my first teacher there, and he was very nurturing. He showed me took me through a lot of repertoire, a lot of etudes, but most importantly, he showed me the valve literature, which I knew nothing about. So he took me through all all of the bass trumpet and tenor tuba excerpts. And then this gentleman, Mr. Camilos, the guy I mentioned from Sacramento, who ended up there as well. And we got together and said, we got two great teachers here. I'm interested to study with D. Stewart. He was studying with Glenn Dotson. And I kind of said, I'd like to try out Glenn Dotson because he's here, And so we talked to D. Stewart, and he said, that's fine. And so I made the switch, and then I studied with Glenn.
And so was he already teaching at Curtis, or did you kind of?
He was already teaching there.
Okay.
He'd been on the faculty for a long time, both of them.
They just took turns taking different students. Is that how?
That's
it was? Okay.
Each year, was they alternated the pick for the young entering student.
Is it true you didn't get into Curtis the first try?
Yeah, that's true.
See, you hear that, 16-year-olds? That's okay. It's okay. Joe Alessi didn't get in the first.
I was a little bit disappointed, and my mother gave me a pep talk and said, you're gonna play this ballet job, and you're gonna go and try again at Curtis.
Good
You're gonna do that, and that's what I did. So she kind of built me back up, and I gave it another shot.
Were you pretty tough on yourself? I mean, you were telling stories about how young you were and how disappointed you would get with playing the trumpet. Like, did you always kind of carry that pressure with you?
I was kind of tough on myself. If something didn't go right, I got pretty frustrated. And as a young student, one time I wanted to throw the instrument, and so what I did is I set up all these pillows on my bed, and I just tossed the instrument. It just kind of felt good, and I don't recommend that, but it's anyway.
They Major League Baseball teams will have those rooms where people can just go in and destroy things. Like, that'd be therapeutic for musicians if we found some way to
Have a rage room.
like a fake instrument that you could destroy. It's an idea for everyone. So I'm actually pretty good friends. I play with Phil McClellan a lot in Harrisburg, and
Okay.
he was your roommate there. And I asked him one time, just like, what was it like having Joe Alessi as your roommate? And he was just like, I never saw him. I woke up, he was already practicing. I went to bed, he was still practicing.
Boring life.
Where does that? It sounds like you've always had that, like from a young age, from all the stories I hear. I mean, where did that drive? What fueled you the most? Did you have an idea?
I don't know. And you got to have a passion in life. Anything, We all love the trombone here, and so if you pick the trombone, you might as well go all in, and that's what I did. I went all in, and I said, this has to be right, and you find ways to practice. My dad helped me with how to practice. Fragmentation was a big part of taking things apart and putting them back together again. Drilling things, and I was just into that. The more I drilled, the more confidence I got, and then I realized I could do more things on the instrument. And so I think that it's just kind of a building process. But I think everybody has to start with going all in, with what we do. It could be anything. It could be, my wife goes all in with what she does. She's head of a soup kitchen where we live.
Wow.
Yeah, and she is so passionate about that. I mean, she has a whole system and picks up food from, has people coordinate things, grocery store pickups. It's amazing how much food is wasted in the world, but she is working on this, but so passionate about that.
That's great.
So tell us more about your relationship with Glenn Dotson and what he did for you while a student there and while starting your career.
Well, and Jim and I we talk about Glenn Dotson all the time. So because he was so important to us, and I think Glenn was the Babe Ruth of the trombone. He would be the guy the person that you would. he would say, "Okay, tonight I'm going to hit this high F, and you're going to hear it." And you'd show up at the orchestra, and you heard it. I mean, you could hear it, and sometimes he'd miss, and be missed big. And something about that I just liked. I thought, wow, he just missed this note, and it just everybody heard it everywhere. and you went, whoa, But he took chances, and really took chances, and he was my hero for that, because I wanted to be a first trombone player. I love playing second trombone, but in my blood, I just I wanted to be expressive as much as possible within the orchestra and have opportunities. So I would just say that, and also his demeanor was one where he would make fun of things, or he would make a joke. He wouldn't take himself too seriously, and I really enjoyed that. And his laugh was infectious. When he laughed, it was something about him. He was just like a big father to you. I would say. And anyway, when I talk about it, I get a little emotional about it. But.
And you were close literally to the very end.
Yes, yeah. He was there when I was there when he passed away, and that was a day I don't like to think about too much. But he was very passionate about cars, and that's why Jim and I are very passionate about automobiles, and so that's what he was showing me at the time. He was showing me his new automobile, and I think he was very happy. He was very happy. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Well, going back to Curtis, Joe, in your relationship with Glenn, and you talked about you were attracted to this idea of him going for something, go big or go home mentality. When he would go for something and say miss a note, miss it big, how did that affect him? Would he beat himself up?
Yes.
Yeah.
He didn't like that, So I went to one of the things, he would love to drive to either New York or Washington when we played in Carnegie Hall or Kennedy Center. So I would love this. We'd get in his Porsche 911 and anyway, so we drove down to Washington, and Muti was conducting Bolero. And, in Boleros, everybody shows a human side eventually, okay? So I've had a long record of that as with good Boleros, but, every once in a while you're going to have something bad happen. And so I've experienced that. But you feel horrible when you do that. But Glenn had one night where it didn't go well, and with Muti conducting. So I had to go back in the car with him all the way to back to Philadelphia, and nothing was. I tried to say something, to make him feel better, but he wouldn't hear nothing. I said, "Joe, just let me be."
Whoa.
And so it wasn't until we hit Wilmington, Delaware, where he finally started to say something. And, but that taught me something, that hey, the best of the best can have a bad night. And he was very upset, and I've had those same feelings as well, when something doesn't go right.
So how do you reconcile this thing that you admired so much about him, being that he would go for it, and he would either hit a home run, or something doesn't go as well as he wanted? How do you hold on to that mentality of still going for it and reaching for that thing when it hurts so much when it doesn't work out?
Well, I think Doc Severinsen, he's another great hero of mine. I watched him miss things in concert, and he tells that story every time. He has a little spiel, a little thing he does, showmanship, and he plays something, he missed something, and then he stops, the audience is applauding and going crazy, and he says, now, my dad always told me, he said, when you fall off the horse, you got to get back on again. And so that's what you do. You fall off and you get back on. And that he went ahead and replayed the whole movement of whatever concerto he was doing, and then obviously he nailed it. But so this happens in the brass world. Not everything goes 100%, and there's little things are going to happen. So I just try not to beat myself up about that so much. And as long as you go back and you can improve what you missed, I think that's important. When you're in an audition, it's really important if you make a mistake and you get another chance, don't repeat the mistake, and you have to practice for that. So if you in your practice room and you have something and you get frustrated and this didn't, I wanted this to happen, it didn't happen. Clear the air, have some peace and quiet, maybe sing and conduct, maybe write a position in or write a breath mark, maybe needed more air, and then, practice it. And then, okay, now you're going to perform it and you're not going to repeat that mistake. And if you repeat it again, then you didn't do enough to change things. You have to have a different approach. Maybe a crescendo or whatever. There's many things you can do to correct that issue.
So I guess on the other end of taking chances and going for it is playing it safe all the time. And obviously
that's no fun.
That's no fun.
Yeah.
Right? And so have you, as you've gone through your career, those times when you beat yourself up, when things haven't gone exactly how you wanted to, have you, as you've gotten older, have you been able to forgive yourself more in those circumstances? Or do you still kind of...
No, you never really forgive yourself, but you just go back to the drawing board and try to find another way. Sometimes when you perform things, it's maybe not till a year later that when you re-perform it that you might find, wow, why didn't I, it's sitting there right in front of you, and then a year later, you've changed something in your playing, and you can approach that area and it's not nearly as much of a problem, so.
Absolutely. All right, let's keep walking through.
Yeah. So let's talk about when you're in school. When did you start preparing for, okay, I'm going to start taking some auditions and try to get towards the next step in my life?
Well, because I had auditioned for the San Francisco Ballet and got the job, that was my first audition. I figured this would be the easiest thing. Wow, no problem. Little did I know that there's an art to taking an audition. I think that was kind of beginner's luck, and so...
Yeah, I hate when that happens.
So it's like there's, a young boy who's playing golf. My friend, his son is playing golf, and he has no fear, because he's so young. They just do things, and so anyway, I took some auditions at school. The first one was very interesting, the New Orleans Symphony, okay, and it was a 1-year position. And 120 people showed up for the audition.
Wow.
And they all showed up at the same time. That was before they knew anything, knew much about auditions and how to organize them correctly. So 120 people, and they all warmed up in this same place. It was an art museum, very boomy. So it's just kind of these, it sounded like a B-52 bomber, and very intimidating. So I didn't play well at all. I was God, this is not like the other audition I took, and so I was pretty dejected about that. And I went to the airport. I wanted to just get out of town, So there was an early flight, but there was only one seat left in first class, and I bought it. And because
treat yourself.
Just get out of town. So anyway, that was my first audition, and then I took some other auditions in National Symphony in Baltimore. And Baltimore, I didn't advance in any of these auditions. Nothing. nothing. And so I realized, anyway, when I auditioned for the Philadelphia Orchestra, that was a tough audition because I was already there. I was already playing in the orchestra. And so, but they gave me the job. And it wasn't until after that that I really figured out how to play auditions, because once I didn't have a teacher. You know, you can always go to a teacher and they can coach you on an audition. But couldn't happen really, because I was in the Philadelphia Orchestra. This Montreal Symphony job opened up, and I didn't feel right asking Glenn Dodson, "Hey, will you help me, leave the orchestra?"
Right.
I didn't feel right about that, so I just started recording myself. That's the first time I ever really recorded myself on a regular basis, and I was able to vet myself. I was able to make decisions myself, how I wanted to sound and what I wanted to do. And so very meticulously for 1 month, recording excerpt 4 or 5, maybe 5 or 6 times in a row. And after each time, you'd listen. Okay, what's not right here? Okay, that's not right. Okay, what intonation's not right? And I just started making all these notes and using the pencil, writing little things down. And then I really knew the geography of everything. I knew everything I wanted to do. So when I went to Montreal, that was one of the best auditions I've ever played. And so it was all behind the screen. And Ron Barron played in the Montreal Symphony. He's here today. And so anyway, it was just something that I came up with this formula, and I'm going to use that for the New York audition. So yeah, there was only 2 auditions.
How'd that work out?
and in New York I did the same thing, and the first round was really one of the also same result.
Now, leading up to this, were you recording yourself regularly before this process of taking auditions for Montreal and for?
No.
So this began the process of regularly recording
Yes.
yourself.
Yeah,
And
never thought about doing that.
And that wasn't like a universally normal thing that like everyone was just, now it's like every teacher tells you should be recording
Yes.
yourself. But,
Yeah, it was just something. Well, we didn't have the technology. We had these little cassette things, and not the best quality. But so I just used the cheapest cassette deck that I had, and I could find find everything I needed to find, which is basically rhythm and intonation. Mm-hmm. This is what happens at auditions: is your rhythm and intonation have to be spot on, no mistakes with that. If you play with great rhythm and intonation and good sound and good musicality and you miss a note, that's okay. And you're still in the plus column, But if you are not doing those other things, you miss a note, you're going in the negative column right away. Mm-hmm. So that's really how I think of it as the Olympics, scoring.
Because I know that this is a cornerstone of your teaching, is teaching people to record themselves and basically be their own teacher when it comes to those things about listening for feedback and trusting your ears from a recording, not your ears while you're playing necessarily, to really be hard on yourself when it comes to that. Yes. So it really began back then.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
What was your year in Montreal like?
Oh, it's great. We had fabulous brass players. Jim Thompson. Mm-hmm. We had Pierre Boudry, who was still there in the orchestra. Ellis Ween, an amazing tuba player, who was a fabulous racquetball player too. We played racquetball a couple times. Bob Early, who just retired from the Philadelphia Orchestra, trumpet, and John Zerbel, the first horn player. Bill Caballero was there. We were good buddies and doing lots of things. Anyway, so it's Charles Dutoit conducting, great repertoire, and played a lot of boleros when I was there. And
Trial by Fire.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty fun city too. Did you?
Oh.
How young were you at that time?
I was 24.
24. So did you get out much, or were you kind of just like, I have
Oh
this
no,
job?
I did a lot of skiing there up in the Laurentians. Jim Thompson loved to ski, so did I, and so Mount Saint Sauveur was a great place skiing. A lot of great food, a lot of great bars. Just really great town.
How's your French?
It's non-existent. Bill Caballero and I did take French lessons together.
Really?
Yes.
That would be a good YouTube series.
However, the French teacher, she was very nice, but very beautiful. And we didn't learn anything.
Understood.
So you're in Montreal, then you auditioned for the New York Philharmonic. I remember when I was in school that you showed us a tape for, I can't remember if it was for Montreal or for New York Phil, that you had to make. Do you remember which audition that was?
In the New York Philharmonic.
The New York Philharmonic. So you recording yourself regularly, obviously you were prepared to make a tape. I mean, because you were familiar with the equipment, familiar with doing this. So you get into the Philharmonic. At this point, you're what, 25 years old? 26 years old?
I think I was 25.
Okay, 25 years old.
Yeah.
And you told me once also that when you got there, not terribly long after, you had an accident, right?
I did. I had a bad accident.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't a good day, but it taught me that if you have an accident or an injury, you can recover from it. Because this was bad. I was after 3 or 4 years in the orchestra, I was taking apart a swing set. We were getting ready to move, and it was one of these wooden swing sets. So anyway, I was using a hammer and trying to get this board off, but I was in the wrong position. I needed to have a high ladder, and which is that's treacherous too. But you don't want to be hammering up to something. Never do that. So anyway, it ricocheted off this. Anyway, ricocheted. It came back. The hammer goes past your head. It's going like this, But it came on, instead of here, it went boom, right there. Yeah, I know.
I hope the hammer's okay.
So right away, I reached for my teeth, and those were fine. So those were there still, because you're in shock. And I called my father. And I said, "What do I do here?" There was blood coming out, but the outside was fine. It was just the inside that was damaged, for the compression. And so he said, "Just put ice on it. Put ice on it and leave it there as long as you possibly can." And so I probably left it on there for a couple hours, and that probably saved my career.
Gosh.
Yeah, and I slept. I rested, and I kept applying ice. I probably slept for 2 days.
Wow.
just sleeping and letting the body heal, because it's amazing what the body can do when it heals and you allow it to heal. So anyway, and then I didn't touch the instrument for 1 month, and he said, when can I start playing? And so he said, when all the discoloration goes away and when all the pain goes away, then you can do something. So one day, no pain, no discoloration, I just went just like that. That was it, the first day. If I could buzz, I might have a career still. And the next thing was just the mouthpiece, just maybe one note, and then I just slowly came back. So if you ever get an injury of any sort, don't play on it. If you get hit, or if you have a sore or canker sore, or whatever, it's good just to let things heal first, and then start playing again.
Yeah, and people with wisdom teeth too, because that's a common one. I think a lot of people try to come back early from that, and you can get dry sockets and all sorts of stuff. And so, stay off it as long as you can.
So, 25 years old, new principal trombone in the New York Philharmonic, moving to New York City, probably making more money than you ever had before. 25 years old. What's going on through your head right now?
Well, I was lucky. I married a amazing woman, and she's been my partner and taking me through very stressful things, and she's my advice. I go to her for advice, and anyway, so that there's ups and downs. When you make mistakes, when you're young, and you have to get along with everybody and learn. You have some very challenging people to deal with along the way, conductors and musicians and whatever.
I want to ask so many follow-ups.
Well, all I'll say is that that's the way it is when you work in any organization.
Sure.
You're going to have characters and people who challenge you in some ways, and you have to be mentally strong. And my dad also was he was very mentally tough, and he so getting advice from him, he was very, very helpful. So yeah, it's not easy playing in an orchestra and producing, every day. And every week is different. There might be something that happens, whatever. If you make a mistake or something, like you say, you got to get back on the horse, and so you have to really believe in yourself, and you have to have a sort of a fighting spirit. That fighting spirit that you really have to. If something goes tough, okay. Failure's okay. Failure's fine. Matter of fact, you're going to learn when you fail, but it's what you do after that's really important.
Absolutely. Early on, did you feel like you were? It's one of those things. Like when what you just described made me think of the quote. Like if you're not going to believe in yourself, who do you expect to believe in yourself? Kind of thing. Did you kind of like earn the confidence through experiences and just supplement that by just really being super prepared all the time and practicing?
Well, there's certain tests. As a first trombone player, there's certain tests. Ron obviously knows all those tests. The Bolero and Mahler 3, and Brahms 2nd, and you got to have your money. You got to have your playing together, and you have to produce at these moments and chorales. This is part of the job that's very important, and you have to study this very intently. And when Brahms first comes around, I don't take that for granted. I'm going to practice it, and play a bunch of high A's with the metronome and try to learn something, So I've never taken anything for granted, and I've worked hard at everything I've done. So I'm not a natural player really, like Glenn Dotson was, who could wake up and play a high F, at 4 a.m. It's some of that stuff's gotten better over the years for sure, but I had to find a way that works for me, and that's changed over the years. So I had to. You always have to try different things, and not be afraid to experiment. That's important. We don't want to stick with one thing and, hey, this is the way I play, and there's nothing I can do about it. That's not true. There's a lot you can do, and with different, just small little things. So I'm a golfer, not very good. I golfed with my friend the other day, and
what's your handicap?
I'm handicapped. Let's put it that way. So, but it's very similar. Like with your grip, these little changes you do can change so many things. So there's tiny little change. How you hold the horn. What is your posture like? What is your are you going to use your left side or right side? I'm very right side oriented. I'm dominant. So how is that going to work with your face, and what kind of techniques are you going to use to breathe, and what are you going to use for support, and how are you going to do that? That's all these things. You can find different things along the way, and it could be from a class that somebody gives. I might be, oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that, and you just try things. It's really good to try things. Experiment.
And it keeps it fun. It's like
Absolutely.
And so do you feel like you've always had kind of the spirit of always learning?
You have to have quiet time to learn, so if you're running around doing things, it's really hard to learn and to find out a little thing in your brain that clicks. So when you warm up, I like to have quiet warm-up time. There's a lot of people like to warm up in a big room together, and I can't really tell what I'm doing. I can hear everybody else, but I can't really hear very clearly what I'm doing. So I like to, have that kind of slow, quiet warm-up time, and then I can put things together.
So we're getting into a point in your career where a very important part of your life enters, and that's when you start teaching. So when you first started in the Philharmonic, you taught at Manhattan School, right? Mm-hmm. And you were at Manus as well? Mm-hmm. So can you walk us through kind of beginning teaching and what that kind of taught you about playing? Once you started learning how to teach, learning how to be more effective at that.
Well, I've been very lucky. I've always, in New York, we've had wonderful students come through the city to audition. And one thing that was interesting is I would be on the faculty of all three institutions there, and the same people would audition at each school. So it got very confusing. So do I take this person at this school or that school? And so I went to the administration and asked Juilliard, I would just like to teach here. And that was a big change. But I learned from all the students, so the students will come in, they'll play something, I say, man, I can't play it better than that. That's really great. And so when it's, one thing you learn is, hey, if the person has a weird embouchure or whatever, and they sound great and they can make music, and leave them alone. Just leave the person alone. Let them play. And so when they struggle, okay, then we have to make a change. So it's not fun to change somebody's embouchure, but it's important that they try to change it if that's necessary. So, and I've so I won't name names, but there's some students that you will know that they changed these embouchures and it made a big difference. So it's like changing a grip is what it is for a golfer. It's all that is, and it's not fun to go through, but I've changed embouchures myself. So it's something that you can't be afraid to do that. And
one of those, like, take a few steps back so you can take
exactly.
more
She
steps forward.
said this is not going to be fun for about a month or two, and then but you should give it a try, And I'll be honest, sometimes that doesn't work, So they just can't make the change, So, but what else have I learned from teaching? Just to be patient. And to realize that every student you have to approach differently. So that's not something I really knew at the time when I was 26 or 27 teaching. It took me a while to figure that out. So there are some students that are real headstrong, and they want to do be more independent, and I'm okay with that. As long as it's a good musical result. It's not maybe the way I would do it, but so I think I'm letting the students, if they have a strong musical conviction, they need to run with that and give that a try.
So what do you've had so many successful students, and you've gotten to hear some of those talented students come through Juilliard throughout your career, and you've helped them in so many positions and have wonderful careers. What, when you're getting a consistent talent pool every year, what separates these students? What are common traits that the ones that stand out that make it through tend to have?
Well, number one, they're very interested and curious. Okay, so they attend a lot of concerts. They ask a lot of questions. They're very willing to listen and try things. They're very quick to respond. Okay, so and they just want to eat it up and absorb it, and you can tell when so if students ask a lot of questions, it's I let them so that's great. I like this. Go ahead and ask questions, and it might take a little extra time, but they want to know, they want to know what it is that they need to do. So that's very, very, that's a great trait in a student. So curiosity, and also just the drive, and the ones that are really honest with themselves, so. And the ones that don't criticize other students, when criticizing other students, I've had a few students who have done that, and I've had to talk with them. But criticize yourself. You don't need to do that to other students. So let me do that. and so anyway, just things like that. That's what I've.
So if you've listened to our podcast, we've talked to a lot of your former students, and they've talked about how you can be a tough teacher and very demanding, but at the same time you have the results that are kind of unquestioned. Do you think, does that go hand in hand? Do you think their success, like you needed to provide a certain floor there, or is it a kind of a thing where you just go by the individual basis kind of thing?
Some students are motivated enough that I don't need to say anything. Okay, but others need motivation. Now, the motivation I like to make sure they practice. I want to make sure they're prepared when they come into the lesson. So some of this toughness, if you want to call it, it's just really they need to do what they're supposed to be doing. And if you're going to come to a school, any school, and your parents are spending a lot of money on that. And you're gonna, especially nowadays, you're gonna be a trombone player, or any music student in a very competitive environment. Well, you got to come and go all in, just like I did. You have to go all in. So I'm all in with my students. I let things hang out a little bit. So if there's something that is an intonation issue, okay, you got to get it right, so you have to get it right, and you have to practice to get it right, and so the intensity level is, it's a little higher, but I think it's important that, some of those students need to be pushed, I think.
That's one of the most challenging parts about being a teacher, right? Especially when you're getting such talented students. If you have a talented student that you see that's not going
this
forward.
happens, and I've had the ones that are not as talented that work really hard, and they're successful. So some of this, when you arrive at the Juilliard School, some students think, okay, wow, it's going to be easy, and they don't realize that, hey, well, that
You raise your hand now.
that person is doing a lot better than what I'm doing, and I came in thinking that I'm going to do great, and it's not necessarily the case. So anyway, we get down to business. I don't mince words. If something is not correct, I go right to the problem, and I will praise my students in the areas that they do well. But and if there's an issue, let's deal with that now. Let's not wait till the end of the lesson to deal with it. Mm-hmm. Let's go to your weakest point in the beginning of the lesson, so we expose that and we figure out what to do.
Rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah. So along these lines, just a little story. I remember being in school, and we were preparing, I believe, for the annual holiday concert, the trombone choir. And this is one of those things that honestly, let's be honest, for the situation, 2 rehearsals would probably get the job done. Mm-hmm. But you wouldn't just get the job done. You would make us come in and sound great. the only option. And there was one time we had a rehearsal. It was supposed to be the last rehearsal before the concert, and you said, that's not good enough. We're going to have another one after you had a concert at the Philharmonic. We're going to have one at 10 p.m. tonight. And we were lamenting as students that our Saturday night was being taken away from us. And we're like, well, what's wrong? Why do we have to do this? But now looking back as a person who has a job, who has my own family, I have a wife, and things I'd like to get home to, I look at it through the lens that you have now, which is you didn't have to do that for us. You were doing us a solid as a teacher by demanding excellence from us and not saying good enough is okay. And I think that just kind of feeds into being all in, like you said. And there's a lot of cases like that, having 9 a.m. rehearsals and things like that. And so I guess I appreciate it definitely from a retrospective aspect, but in the time, yeah, it's you go all in, and that's why your students are your students.
Thank you. Bye.
And while we're on the teaching front, another common theme of the podcast is there's so many instances where you almost just discover people in a way. It's like you seem like one of the foremost talent scouts. It's like Joe Alessi. I got a lesson with Joe Alessi when they were touring, and he heard me play, and he invited me to audition at Juilliard, and all these things. Do you feel almost a responsibility to nurture and discover the next generation and pass it forward?
I get a lot of these things from my father, because he gave up this performing career and he became a prolific teacher, and he was so passionate about students. I'm listening to listening to those lessons, and he was in there all in with these students, making sure that they played their quarter note and eighth notes correctly, things like that. And just he wouldn't sit there and just do nothing. He would be singing, and so I just got that from him, and he took great pride in his students, and I just love to help young trombonists reach their goals, and I don't know why, it's just part of my DNA to pass that along and have a student build up their skills and see, like Brian Wendell did, Brian was very talented from the beginning, but it was so exciting to work with somebody that talented and work on my view of music and how we can make phrasing work for him, and so he worked very hard. He was a hard worker, but just watch somebody come from high school and to see them in a big orchestra is really quite something. I mean, when they call me and say, Mr. Alessi, I won the job, that is unbelievable to get a phone call like that. And I said, okay, you don't have to call me Mr. Alessi anymore. Anyway.
Okay, Mr. Alessi. Forgot to ask. So you've had a pretty prolific, I think my mic keeps cutting out, but I'm going to keep talking loudly, prolific solo career with the New York Philharmonic. From what I've read, the first thing you ever played was the Creston with the Philharmonic. How soon was that, and was that one of the first times you really started diving into solo playing and playing concertos in front of an orchestra?
Yeah, when I got into the orchestra, I got a call from the Lincoln, Nebraska Symphony, and they wanted me to come and play a concerto. So I played the Swarovski concerto, and that was my first real experience playing in front of an orchestra, and it was really infectious. I said, "Wow, I want to do this again," and so I can't remember how that came about, but maybe the management came to me and said, "We'd like to feature you in a concerto," and again, going back to Glenn Dotson, he loved Creston. That was one of his favorite pieces, and it's kind of the war horse, if you will, of our repertoire. You gotta be able to produce on that piece. And I remember trying to play it in high school and for the first time, and God, this thing crested, and I got through the first page, and then I turned the next page. Oh, this is not bad. And then the third page, it's just something that was really challenging. And then it kept going. Wow, all this stuff. And so I wanted to tackle that. Leonard Slacken conducted, and and then. The next thing was, I believe, the Rouse Concerto after that. And that was another opportunity from the Philharmonic. They had a big patron who contributed lots of money for the 150th anniversary celebration, and they said, okay, every principal player is going to get a new concerto. And, that's the great organization I work for. And so my wife, we were given a list of cassettes. We were given a lot of cassettes of different composers that were approved by the artistic administrator. And so nobody had picked this composer Rouse. And my wife noticed it, in the big bin of cassettes, why don't you listen to him? Because I know his music from when I went to University of Michigan. And so I did. I said, wow, this is interesting. And so the score showed up, and I freaked out. I said, holy cow, what is this? What did he didn't really consult me or anything. He just wrote it.
I thought the press was hard.
Yeah. And so anyway, it turned out to be a great concerto and won the Pulitzer Prize. And a lot of people, my friends, have played it. Christian Lindbergh has played it, Mark Lawrence. I think Craig Mulcahy just played it in Washington. So it's really an amazing concerto. If you have never heard it, you should listen to it sometime.
Do you know off the top of your head how many concertos you've performed with the Philharmonic?
Not that many. I mean, it seems like a lot, but maybe maybe a dozen, something like that.
I still remember, and just hearing you talk about this, it just came back to me. I still remember hearing you being in my childhood bedroom, listening to a live broadcast of the Pew Concerto being premiered, and just like sitting in my room, and my Joe Alessi poster may or may not have been on my door at the time, listening. that Times Square one.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to imagine some crazy New Yorker driving by.
Yeah, what is that guy doing in the middle of Broadway? That's the way I felt. Yeah. Anyway.
Fast forward to a year and a half ago, you get this opportunity to. You're going to get an opportunity to premiere the Chick Corea Trombone Concerto. How did that come to be?
Well, I had been pursuing some composers to write a new concerto. So this had been going on for a while, and I wanted to. Anyway, there was another commission that was kind of promised to me. So we talked to John Adams. Okay, we talked to Wynton Marsalis. We talked to John Williams. We talked to John Harbison. Out of all those composers, John Harbison, he did say yes, and I loved his music very much. But he actually said yes to the Philharmonic, and then when the music was due, there was no score that was delivered, and so he called me and he said, "I have to apologize, but I'm involved with my opera at the Metropolitan Opera, and I can't get this done." So that was a big disappointment. And so a couple of years went by. I said, I'm gonna think of somebody else. And there was a gentleman, Makoto Ozone, a great pianist, a great jazz pianist who was soloing with us. And Makoto and I talked about jazz, and I actually went over to Japan to play with his big band as a kind of a field trip. But that was fun. But he came to New York again. Alan Gilbert said, "Hey, let's go down and hear Makoto at the Blue Note." and with Gary Burden, the great vibes player. So anyway, we did that, and that night they played a tune by Chick Corea, Brasilia. And just something came over me. I don't know, just something came over me where I said, God, this would be, if Chick Corea could write something for the trombone, it would be outstanding. And so I had the nerve to go ask Makoto if he knew Chick very well. He said, you think Chick would be interested? He said, well, I don't know. Let me text him. And so the next day I got a phone call from Makoto. He said, yeah, he answered, and he said he would like to pursue it.
Wow.
Or be interested. He'd be interested. So at that point, Chick and I started texting one another, and because he wasn't quite sure whether he wanted to do this, and because he had some not great experiences with symphony orchestras in the past, and so he asked me a lot of questions about the New York Philharmonic. What's the orchestra like? What do they like new music? And I said, yes, we're very flexible. We embrace all new music, and we take it very seriously. So, that's great. And so I have all those texts on my phone. I'm going to print them out and save them. I need to do that right away. But anyway, so he invited me. One text, he just said, I'm going to do this. I want to do this, and let's do it. And I'm probably, maybe John and Chick were talking at that time, perhaps, about the project. So anyway, he invited me down to Clearwater, Florida, and I worked with him and played with him. We played Brasilia together. We improvised a little bit together. I was embarrassed to do that in front of him, but he was very welcoming. He was not the kind of person that would judge you and just dismiss you. He looked at he was a very positive person, I found, and very welcoming and very warm. And so he just said, hey, we're going to do this. And we started, he asked me to play some things. He did request some recordings of me.
You're like, I have a few.
So anyway, we had a really wonderful relationship. I went down there twice. We had dined together. We talked about music. We talked about our history, some similarities there. From Italian family, his mother's side, I believe, and we just kind of bonded a bit. It was really nice. And so, sadly, he got sick, and people weren't aware that he finished the concerto before he passed away. And John here took the score, and there were some loose ends, and he was able to put it together, and thanks to him. And so anyway, on August 1st, I'm leaving for Brazil to do the premiere.
Wow.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Where in Brazil?
The Sao Paulo Orchestra.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh man. Will that be live streamed or anything?
I think it is. Yeah, it is going to be live streamed.
Wow.
I found out. Yeah.
Definitely should know that.
And then when is the U.S. premiere?
That'll be with the New York Philharmonic in 22-23. That was supposed to be about a month ago, but of course everything got changed around. So I'll go to Portugal to do it. I'm going to go to Japan next summer and some other places as well.
Fantastic.
Very exciting. So that kind of brings me to something I've always kind of wanted to ask you, especially in moments like this. Not Joe Alessi going to the grocery store, but Joe Alessi being Joe Alessi, like coming to a trombone festival where you can't walk into a room without like people knowing who you are. Is there a certain amount of pressure you feel to be perfect all the time, or be this image that people have of you? And has that evolved over the years, like as you grow in comfort?
I come to these things. I just want to be myself. I'm trying to be myself and do my job, and I'm not trying to. I want to meet. I'm very nice to meet so many people and talk and see it's kind of when you come to these things, it's a little bit like my seminar. You want to share information. So that's important. We're sharing information. That amount of information that we share at something like this is quite amazing. About a new piece, about a student, about maybe, just playing together, playing with different people in a choir. So that's what this is about. It's not about me. It's just about us sharing, I think. So I'm just happy to be part of it.
That's good. And do you feel different? Do you feel a different energy when you're performing for a trombone audience versus non-trombonists?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's you're playing for trombonists. It's a tough audience, but at the same time, I think it's a very forgiving audience because we know what we go through, all of us, to do this. So everybody's wanting everybody to do well, and we're here for that reason. So yeah, I realize I kind of look at it that way rather than everybody's here to get their feathers up and everything. So I think it's really great to come back to a live festival. I mean, God, this has been just so stressful, to deal with this pandemic. But
we haven't even asked about how your year's been in that regard.
Yeah, well, that's it's been a good year. After 30 or 40 years of playing concerts Saturday nights, I got to stay home. This is not a bad thing, and you don't have to run off really fast and gulp your dinner down. You can take time, to eat your dinner. And things like that, more practice time, more time to work on pieces, learning how to record. I know about these little boxes now, and things like that. And talking to Jim on the phone, he's one of the first people I call because I realize that I'm going to die musically if I don't create. So how during the pandemic you got to be able to create. Record, just record anything. Record a trombone quartet or something, and so that brought me back to the recording times when I used to. It was really wonderful to be meticulous and to hear all the things that you cringe when you record and to find kind of through repetition, re-recording it. My playing, grew in the right direction. It was very, very nice. So I used the pandemic time for that and to, kind of reassess life.
Any new hobbies you discovered? More golf?
More cigars?
More cigars, right. No.
The cigar bar right down the street.
I know, yeah, I don't know. I just took the things that I was doing and kind of got into it more. And my jazz lessons, I was able to do that with my teacher. And so,
who's your teacher?
My teacher has always been. My teachers have always been the Juilliard jazz students, people who go through the Juilliard jazz program, because what they want is they want a classical lesson. So, I just bartered with them. I said, okay, half an hour of classical lesson for you and a half an hour jazz lesson for me. So Marshall was, I did that with Marshall when he was at school, a little bit with Mike Dees. But this wonderful gentleman, Kasperi, a Finnish jazz student at Juilliard, I can't pronounce his last name, but he's been very helpful. And I remember I was very happy to help him, with his thing, because he was auditioning for a radio orchestra there that primarily is jazz, but he had to play a classical piece for his audition. And so he had this pea shooter horn with no F attachment. And I said, you can't play that piece on there's no way you're going to be able to play that piece. It was, it was all over the horn. And and it was a classical piece. Said, "You're going to take my horn." So I lent him one of my horns,
Wow.
and he ended up buying that horn, and he won the job. But it took him through, and now he's, when he started with me, he clearly sounded like a jazz guy. Now he can play both equally well, and he's very happy about that. So now he can play a Blazevich etude, and it sounds like a classical player. I had to explain to him the differences, like your tongue stops, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to do too much front on the note. Let's get the ear more involved. Let's lengthen up some notes. As you get louder, let's lengthen up the note. Things like that, and steadiness of pitch. We basically worked on the basics of tone and going back to the beginning. So anyway, but he has me do exercises of various things. He has me do my pentatonic, my minor pentatonic. I didn't know much about that at all. He has me do the major seventh up and down 2 octaves. He has me do the major sixth up and down 2 octaves in all keys. And then the dominant seventh up and down 2 octaves. The minor dominant seventh, the minor sixth up and down. The minor major. It goes on, and the diminished with the half diminished, But these are things I'd heard about, but now I really know them. I know what they're about. I still have to figure out what I'm going to do with these things. But what I learned, especially about jazz playing, is time. Listen, you don't have to play anything too complicated, but make sure your time is correct. Don't flounder with your time. So that's very important.
Are you a good student?
I think I'm I don't practice enough, which is horrible, but I need to practice more. He obviously has practiced more on his end, so I need somebody, he has to be tougher on me, I think.
So I think just a bunch of random questions until we're out of time, but we wrote down a lot of things that we just would love to ask you.
Thank you all for coming here.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Yeah.
So, how have you seen your motivations? How have your motivations evolved in your career as far as when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s? You obviously, you won this major job at a very young age, and you could have just been like, okay, this is my life now, and cool, this is what I do. But you have what I think is such underrated about your career is how entrepreneurial you've been, and how innovative you've been, and the amount of recordings you put out. The Alessi Seminar, Joe Ralph Mutants, Alessi Publications, Alessi Studios, 14 full-length albums, if that's correct. That's what the internet's guessed. What motivated you to just be a doer?
I don't know. I think if you're a musician and you get into an orchestra, you're that fortunate to be in an orchestra and work as a symphonic musician. I just think that's not where you should stop. I think there's Jim, my friend Jim here, he is passionate about John Williams and Star Wars, of course, but not only that, he's looking, his scope and viewpoint is looking like this. So I don't know. Playing in an orchestra is fun. It's great, but it's not enough for me. There's a lot of things in the music, in the world of, there's a lot of contemporary pieces, as you know, that are really, they get played once, and so I think in the world of symphonic music, there's a lot of things that need to change. Why should an orchestra spend all this money on this fancy new composer, and then it ends up a piece that's not that good really, and it gets played once? What is the point of that? So I think that we have to invest. The orchestras need to invest in different ways to bring in audiences, and so So for me, for my, that's their job, though. They have to figure that out. It's not my job to figure that out. But as far as my own personal musical life, I just believe that as a trombonist, it's great to express yourself within the orchestra and be part of the team, and I love that. But as an individual musician, it's not enough for me. I think to actually when I recorded my first CD and to be able to offer this to the world or of trombonists and musicians, that's something that's a goal that is a very tough goal to set for yourself, but you grow musically in the process. So to do something like that, and okay, people respond to that, okay, let's do another one and have a different idea. So it's just like writing your history almost, so there's that. And then these other things that I've done with the Alessi Music Studios, that was something that when you get to my age, a lot of people think, okay, you should write a book, okay, and that's what people do, okay, it's 36 essential studies or something like that, and I didn't want to, I could do something like that, but I wanted to write an online book, a book that, when you write a book, I think you're going to put down what you think at that time, okay, and then it's in print. You can't go back and grab all the copies and change it, okay, or update it. You could update it, but on this online version that I have, where I can add things for the next 10, 20 years, to the site, and you might have a new idea. You can put it up there, and so that's why I wanted pursuing that, and yeah.
So you mentioned history and what you're going to put out there, and have you thought about, I almost hate saying the word legacy, but I'm going to say the word legacy. Have you thought about what you envision, what you, in a dream scenario, your legacy is when your career is over? In addition, have you thought about how long you want to play?
How long I want to
keep playing?
Keep playing. I think I'll keep playing for forever.
Good.
Yeah, my dad. He played to the very end, and he just loved to warm up and do his warm-ups in front of the TV. And I'm finding a lot of brass players like to warm up in front of the TV. There's something, I don't know what it is, but, something about it.
You turn off that secondary voice, you just like doing.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll have to have a discussion about that sometime. Why is it? Let's poll all of our
we could do that
society and say, well, who warms up in front of the TV and why do you do it? Why do you do that? Okay. Anyway, but so it's something that what was the question here?
Legacy.
Oh, legacy. Yeah. Somebody asked. I'll keep playing and I will pursue my jazz studies for sure. I probably play a smaller bore horn, which would be wonderful to play after all these years on a regular basis. But continue to come to things like this, and maybe do some master classes along the way. I want to keep teaching, for a long time. And I have a sort of idea when I might stop in the orchestra, but I want to keep playing in the orchestra as long as I'm having fun. So right now I'm having fun. I'm enjoying it, so I'll keep playing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we're all luckier for it. So, okay. So a couple rapid fire questions before we run out of time. So a couple questions we normally ask, and then I'm going to ask a couple questions from the audience. Advice to your 18-year-old self?
Slow down.
This is the first guest that has actually treated a rapid fire question as a rapid fire answer.
Keep it a rapid fire. Keep it
Rapid fire.
I don't even know what to do.
Come on, rapid. Let's go.
Okay. This is probably a tough question. What recording if you could pick one, are you most proud of? Orchestral or solo, or both?
This Hidosh meditation that I've recorded, it's something about when I listen to that, I don't normally like, when you listen to yourself, it's hard to listen to yourself, as you know, but when I listen to that, it's my expression. I'm very happy with what I did on that recording.
Very cool. I'm sure all the downloads will shoot up now after this. Let's see. Okay. We have one question. How did singing influence and or support your development as a player, and how do you use singing with your students? I was told to ask about barbershop quartets as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm really sorry I missed the Megumi Kanda recital. I heard it was fabulous, and so I asked my friends, and he said she really has a voice when she plays, and I think that's really important. And when you're behind the instrument, it's really what the voice in your head. So for me, that was set up very young to listening to my mother sing. My mother had fabulous voice. She sang with perfection, with ultimate pitch and expression. And so my dad was the technician, and my mother was the artist, and it's the way I looked at that. And so I kind of got, borrowed from both of them. But invariably, when you have trouble practicing and you're getting to how do I put this brass thing together and attacks and range and rhythm and cleanliness with the slide, and yes, you need to look at all that, but you have to be an artist. You got to be an artist, and you have to be a singer, and So this is why if you were to take a lesson with me, I'm going to have you play a scale, okay? And then after that happens, I'm going to hear you play a brochure. I want to hear what melodious thing you can do on the instrument, okay? So if you can be a lyrical player and sing, then you have something, and so when we work on the Bordonis, we've all done that. That is the culmination of how to be an artist, putting all those things together: your slide technique, your sound, your releases, your dynamics, your expression. Where are you phrasing to and away from, and that's how if you know more about those things, and then you combine it all becomes one, and then it just becomes singing, so.
And this leads to a question I love on here from Ben Garcia. What inspires you the most outside of the music world? Where do you draw inspiration from other art forms, sports, professions?
Well, obviously, in music, it's the great jazz players of the past. To me, if I'm going to listen to something, it's going to be Clifford Brown, or it's going to be Irby Green or J.J. Johnson. I mean, I like happy singing kind of music. I don't need Xenakis or it's great music. Xenakis, it's fine. It's not what I listen to. I listen to just happy singing music, and I'm happy to listen to Frank Sinatra. I'm happy to listen to just singers of the past. I get more inspiration from those people than just about anybody else. If you can harness what they're doing and bring it to the trombone, that's saying something, I think.
And there's so some of those recordings back then were so amazing because they had to be able to do it live. They didn't have the benefit of all this production value and everything. It's just some of the most amazing singers ever. I love listening to the 40 station on Sirius XM. So before Nick asks his traditional last question, I would just like to ask you, is there anything else that you'd like to say or add in conclusion?
I'm hearing some great playing here at the festival. I mean, just amazing. I haven't had a chance to hear it, because I'm so busy doing what I'm doing, but I can hear, some things from backstage. We're getting ready to perform, and so every time I come to one of these things, the level of playing gets higher and higher. And I think that's why is that? Because the level just, we're raising the bar all the time, and so that's really inspirational to hear that. And to be honest, I'd like to. I think we need to invite, artists that we haven't heard about. I think there's a number of international people that I know that would love to come, and they should be featured here. So I'm going to suggest that. I won't say the names now, but I'm going to suggest a couple names that I think some younger players that you may have heard of that are on the up and coming players, but also there's a few international players that would bring a lot of color and activity to and would be very entertaining for the festival. So that's what I think. I would be absolutely fantastic if these people could be there, and I know you would love them.
All right. So my question I ask all our guests is, as a teacher, what do students need to do more of that they don't do enough of?
Oh boy. Probably listen. The people are not doing enough listening. Listening, first of all, when you play, you're behind the instrument, you're busy operating the instrument. Do the ultimate test. Record yourself, listen to yourself, and see what's going on. So you're not busy operating the instrument. You can just sit back and relax, or not relax, and write down some thoughts about your playing. Number one, and number two, listen to. If you're in the business of a classical trombonist, okay, each day listen to a trombone soloist play something, but also a non-trombonist. Listen, pick, go through all the instruments, piano, maybe a singer, and list your favorite artists in each category, and listen to something from the repertoire, Brahms, sonata, or whatever, and just sit back and listen to music, and try to find out what's out there. We're unaware of that sometimes.
Yeah.
I only listen to euphonium CDs, so
Okay.
exclusively. We got our euphonium.
Yeah. I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you for asking me to do this, and I wasn't clear to me this is being broadcast on your.
This will be posted
broadcast
on
later.
Yeah.
Got it. Take out all my uhs and so forth.
Oh yeah. We sound so articulate when the podcast comes out.
Fabulous.
When we record, it's like But Mr. Alessi, Joe, if I may, it's an honor, and thank you so much for hanging out with us on our meager podcast. And you truly have raised the bar for the history of trombone playing, and it will be forever risen because of you. So thank you so much for everything you've done.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Sebastian, how are you?
I'm good. I'm in my childhood bedroom.
I'm in...
These walls could talk.
Exactly. I'm in my mom's basement, so we're kind of in situations.
We've really made it, haven't we?
Exactly.
Full circle.
Hey, kids, if you want to be like us, stay in school.
If you practice really hard, one day you'll end up back in your mom's basement.
Mm-hmm. Because a pandemic will ruin your life.
Man, well, this is a great start.
Exactly. I thought it went pretty well for a first live interview. What do you think, Sebastian?
Yeah, I had no idea what to expect. I mean, I was super excited. We were both super excited. I've learned in my little experience with technology that something always will go wrong. So, I mean, we were scrambling literally until the last minute where we had to open the doors. We had a lot of people standing outside to just get our microphones to work. And we kind of salvaged it. Mine, thanks for your patience. Mine was kind of going in and out, but I think you could hear me throughout. But what blew me away, I don't know how you feel about it, but he came in, I thought, we might have to pry a little bit or it might have to take a while to get comfortable. And he was like, from the beginning, he was warm, he was open, he was unafraid of questions, and he was totally game to stay for, a couple hours with us.
We only had 50 minute session blocked through ITF with him, but it just so happened the room we were in was not needed until another hour after that. And so we just asked Joe, would you be able to stay after? Do you have any obligations after? And he said, no, let's do it. And so we didn't take up every last second, but we went way over what we were supposed to do as far as on the schedule. And so we were very appreciative that he allowed that time so it didn't feel rushed, so that we could actually just talk. Because, that's obviously the format we've tried to build is making it feel somewhat like a conversation rather than like just an interview. It is an interview, but it's also it's also a conversation.
Yeah, and there's inherent challenges when you're trying to create this really comfortable space for someone to be really open and honest. Having an audience there creates a totally different atmosphere. And so, you didn't know if someone would feel as comfortable to be open with so many people around. And he really was. I mean, the thing that kind of blew me away with him was he struck me as very present. He was comfortable in his skin. There's something about him. I feel like you've probably noticed this whenever I've gotten to play with him or play for him. And through this interview, the thing that's special about him is his level of focus in everything he does. And even when you're asking him a question, even when he's answering you, he's like looking you dead in the eyes, giving you his full attention. And you're just like, okay, all right, okay.
Looking through you to your soul.
I mean, there was a few moments in there I'm like, okay, I'm asking a question, Joe Alessi. Okay, all right, okay, all right. We hit a lot of topics. We got to kind of everything that we wanted to get to as far as bullet points to make sure that we hit with him. But yeah, you can never dissect an entire life in an hour and a half conversation. It's pretty difficult to do. Yeah, I could have kept asking him questions for a couple more hours, I think, honestly. There was one question that I had been planning to ask, and I was a little nervous about asking it, but I also felt it was important to ask just based off so many interviews we've had of his students and where, it's no secret that he's very demanding of his students. And I wanted to give him an opportunity to just talk about that kind of philosophy and answer back to that. And I don't think, on the one hand, I don't think it was his favorite question or anything, but at the same time, he didn't back down from it. And he was honest what he thought. And I thought he gave a really good answer.
Yeah, he definitely, I think going into things like that, you are ready for any sort of question. And we didn't throw him any curveballs or anything like that, but we were asking honest questions, I suppose is the best way of putting it. The one thing I wish we had more time with, and this goes to all our guests really, is, and maybe we can in the future we've talked about this, having a separate sort of category, which is just kind of sitting there and talking and telling funny stories about your life, about your career. And there are some that I know of from Joe that I'd love to have him tell so that people could hear these, amazing stories / funny stories, things that have happened in his career, in his life. You just have, like I said, you never have quite enough time in an hour and a half to dissect an entire person's career and life. So I just wanted more of it. I guess that's the best way to boil it down.
And for someone that's interviewed a lot, I feel like we saw him afterwards. We got to talk to him after the interview, of course, and then
there was a night at the bar where I think we all ended up at a cigar place, but he was very gracious. I think he enjoyed it. I hope he enjoyed it. At least I'll tell myself that. But I think we did him justice. And again, a guy like that, you have to like pick and choose what to talk about, because there's literally a million things you could ask him.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah, he was. I mean, I know that he talked to other people, that his friends that he was staying with and stuff like that, about the interview and how happy he was to have done it and how he had a good time. I heard that from a couple of third parties. So that made me feel good about what we had done and made me reassured that it was a success ultimately. I guess the only reason I say the success part is it was our first time doing a live interview. So, I think that we weren't 100% nervous about the interview aspect of it, but you throw in the live aspect, being in front of people, you throw in that, the technology is different than what we're used to using. Like, we're used to doing this over the internet, and doing it in person is just different challenges. So I look forward to doing more of these and obviously getting better and better as we go along.
Yeah, and making sure we capture it correctly for the majority of the audience. And in that regard, profound thanks to Mike Miller and Evan Conroy for helping us set up and helping us capture the audio. You guys were incredible and really saved us a lot of moments. So thank you so much. One thing, I can't say official yet, but unofficially, it seems like there's a good chance that this may become a normal thing, at least at next year's ITF. So we're looking forward to that, and we hope that works out. I think it'd be a lot of fun. But thanks to everyone who came. This was my first ITF in 12 years, like I had been saying, and Nick and I were blown away by so many strangers coming up to us and saying hi and saying they enjoyed the podcast, and that really was so nice. That was a very pleasant surprise, and thank you. It was a fun hang, and so many people came to the podcast. We were scheduling is so tough, so we were during like a George Kern recital and another recital, so it was kind of tough, but we had a good audience, and I had a lot of fun. How was your ITF experience?
Tiring. we burnt the candle from both ends and took a blowtorch to the middle. That's a lot of us. A lot of it's on us, not just the schedule of the festival, but wanting to hang out with people, especially coming out of the pandemic and being so long since we've had anything like this. To be able to be around people, listen to live music, geek out about trombone. I mean, I think we were enjoying ourselves every night and sleeping way too little, but that's okay. It was absolutely worth it. Yeah, I'm glad people came up to us too, because we did mention it in our previous podcast, your podcast, to say, yeah, if you see us at the ITF, come up and say hi. And it was funny. Sebastian and I were walking somewhere, and this young man walked out of the elevator, and he goes like, "Hey, I'm so and so. You said to come introduce myself if I saw you." And so we were like, "Oh yeah." And so a lot of people did that, but he said it straight up. He's like, "You told me to do this, so I'm doing it." And
people walked up and were just like, "Trombone retreat."
Yeah. Amazing. But yeah, I hope, obviously this is part of our goal, one of our many goals with not just this podcast, but the retreat. And, at these festivals where you might run into someone that's your hero. I'm not saying we're your hero. If we are, you might want to reevaluate your life, but to take a chance to just walk up to someone and introduce yourself and say, "Hey, I'm a huge fan, blah, blah, blah." I mean, put yourself in their shoes. It's always going to be humbling to hear that. So I'm glad that people came up to us and talked to us, and maybe it gave them a little bit of courage to go talk to Joe or Brian Hecht or George Curran or Nate Zagant, or whoever.
There was many moments where people, like, I was just standing or talking to someone, and someone would come up and like stand right next to you, and my instinct is to like, "Oh, I'm in the way," and so I'm like, I moved to get out of the way, and no, they had come up to like say hi. So that's something I have to.
But they were shy. They
to.
were kind of like, "Ooh."
No, no, they were being normal, and I was just like, "Oh, I'm in someone's way." Okay. No one's trying to come up to talk to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of my podcast, I guess we haven't talked since the last one. Thank you to everyone that reached out and with kind words. It was really nice. It was nice to get that over with. A couple of things I failed to mention in it is my brother is such a huge part of my life and huge musical influence. He's my older brother and just obsessed with music and all types of all genres, and been a huge influence on my life. He has his own radio station, a radio show in Oklahoma City, and he's a huge Everton podcaster, and he's helped me a lot with this kind of podcast thing. But yeah, I just wanted to mention him. I felt bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we do our interviews, we've heard this from our guests sometimes too, that, oh, I forgot to say so and such, or I forgot to mention this, or, you know, like we said, you can't, it's so easy to overlook details, even big ones like that, like your brother, you know, because you're just trying to get everything in. And
well, I blame the interviewer, so
that's true.
I don't really take personal.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're perfect. I'm broken. I get it. You know, it's the cross I bear.
So I'm here visiting Texas for my father's 80th birthday, and you are in your mother's basement. So really, we are huge successes.
I feel really achieved, but I'm about to fly like a bird through the sky on an aeroplane today. I'm going to Reno, Nevada. Going to be there for a couple nights to be a degenerate and play poker. And then I'm going to my festival that I play every summer called Classical Tahoe. Check it out. There's live streams of the concerts, Classical Tahoe. Really great orchestra in Lake Tahoe, hence the name, just over the California-Nevada border on the Nevada side. And it's, let's just say it's very beautiful. I was about to diss another place, but I won't do that. It is one of the most beautiful places in the world, and I feel very lucky to go there every summer and play. The orchestra is made up of a lot of Met musicians because the contractor, she was associate concertmaster of the Met, Laurie Hamilton. So she hires a lot of Met musicians, but she also before that was in the Chicago Symphony, so the Chicago Symphony players, San Francisco. I mean, great musicians from all over the land, and even international. Like in the trombone section, we have Dave Garcia, who's an American, but he plays in the Zurich Opera, and so. You know, I feel lucky. I'm going to play music again and play with great musicians and great friends and hang out and be in a beautiful place. So
sounds terrible.
And then guess what, everyone? We're going to be retreating ourselves live and in person. Trombone Retreat 2021. We're very, very excited.
Yeah, we're trying something new this year. We've always been pretty selective, but we made it hyper selective this year. We accepted 12 students, and we just want it to be a really personal thing. A lot of private attention. We're going to have, 4 artists there the whole time, including ourselves. And I think it's going to be a great experience for the students. And we're excited just to do it live again. It's the first time live in 2 years.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be posting stories and pictures and stuff like that. So check us out.
If you're in the area, come. We'll have some live recitals if you're in the Western Michigan area. So check our website for the schedule, which will be posted soon. Yeah,
come on. And we one of the venues we perform in is called The Block. It's in Muskegon, Michigan. And it's an old factory that was converted into, I don't want to say concert hall, recital space. Is that a good way of putting it? Because it doesn't have like set seating, so it can be configured in different ways. But it's a really cool kind of like, I don't know, salon sort of vibe. I mean, not hair salon, but musical salon.
I think they get it.
No, I have to explain. But the space itself is amazing. It's beautiful, full of light, great sounding space. So it's a great place to hear recital. And luckily enough, we're going to have Koichiro Yamamoto play there. And then we're going to play there ourselves. And then after each of those concerts, it just
John
so happens,
Romero.
Well, yeah, sorry. Ourselves plus John Romero on a separate concert. Sorry, John. I meant to include you. You're always in my heart. After each of the concerts, the venue just so happens to be on top of a brewery. So we go have some beers afterwards. Come to the concert, have some beers afterwards at Unruly Brewing.
Have some beer before.
Have some beer during, too, because we have a bartender.
It makes us sound way better.
Yeah, I need all the help I can get.
If you enjoy the podcast, please consider leaving us a rating and review on iTunes. If you want to leave a question or topic you'd like us to discuss, we may answer it on the podcast. Follow us at Trombone Retreat on the FaceTubes, Instabooks, Ugrams, and Tweet Machines, and our website, tromboneretreat.com, where you can also join our mailing list. Also, feel free to shoot us an email at tromboneretreat@gmail.com, as we love hearing from you. On Instagram, follow Nick at basstrombone444 and myself at js.vera.
And if
When
your
the times
feet
they
are
get hard,
shit,
damn it. And when the times they get hard,
go to your local haberdashery, buy yourself a new feathered cap, and retreat yourself.
and go on retreat yourself.
Go on, get retreat yourself, boy.
Go on for yourself.
I can do anything. It's in a book. Just take a look. Sebby's hips.